Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mpingo Uhuru. I am currently based in Los Angeles, California. I am a writer, a speaker, and the founder and CEO of Zuri World Studios. At my core, I work with language, structure, and meaning. I write because language shapes reality, and I speak because some ideas need a human voice to carry them. I built a studio because ideas don't survive off of inspiration alone. They survive off of a story. They survive off of a structure. They are built and they are housed and they are contained. They are archived. Zuri World Studios is a creative institution. We work across publishing, audio, and visual storytelling. Underneath all of it is a single commitment: to build a work that preserves dignity, authorship, and humanity, especially in places where people are usually reduced to a story instead of treated as a person. I personally write to identify my own struggles, but also to connect to the struggles that are surrounded within the community. I identify as a writer and a speaker and a CEO because none of those roles alone were sufficient. Writing lets me think. Speaking allows me to translate, and building lets the work last. Becoming CEO wasn't about status, it was about responsibility, owning the conditions under which the stories are created, distributed, and preserved. Zuri World Studios exists because too much meaningful work disappears. I've watched people pour themselves into their art, testimonies, and insight only to lose ownership and control of it, especially people from marginalized backgrounds, especially people whose lived experience institution likes to use and then they throw them away without protection. Zuri World Studios is my answer to that. A place where we create work that is treated like infrastructure instead of context, where authorship is protected, where the voice is not extracted and discarded, where legacy is intentional. I speak about restoration as an architecture. It is the understanding that restoration is not a feeling, it's not a personality trait, it is built. It lives in housing, income, having access, time, language, safety, and continuity. If a person has to transform healing to be treated like a human being, restoration has not occurred. Compliance has. Architecture means restoration can be designed, evaluated, funded, and improved. And it can fail if done poorly. See, restoration is not about motivation. It's not about resilience culture. It's not about telling people to heal while they are refusing to change the conditions that harm them. Restoration is not about fixing people. It's about repairing environments. Survival is what a person builds inside themselves when nothing else around them is built to support them. Restoration is what should be built around a person so survival is no longer required as a permanent state. See, survival keeps people alive. Restoration allows people to live. Survival is expensive. It costs the nervous system, health, personal relationships. Restoration reduces that cost and it begins to allow one to gather these structures that are needed to support and sustain education, employment, access to health care, access to meaningful therapy and treatment. These are structures that restoration builds. These are the pillars for the restorational process. Survival is expensive, as I said. Restoration reduces that cost. See, I spent years in a highly controlled environment where time is weaponized and the bodies are managed. The environment taught me that restoration cannot be motivational, it has to be engineered. I don't share details for shock. I don't focus on spectacle. I focus on structure. The point is not the stories that are told. The point is the design failure that makes survival necessary. Time can be developmental or it can be corrosive. And when time is empty and imposed, it erodes identity. When time is structured with purpose, it can become restorative. Architecture determines which ones you get. See, there are slogans like second chance, but that's all they are, slogans. Restoration is a system. Redemption stories are emotionally satisfying, but redemption still require proof. Restoration stabilizes worth so that proof is no longer demanded. Zuri World Studios is a living example of restoration in practice. We build archives so work cannot disappear. We build ownership so creators are not extracted from. We build processes so work can be repeated and sustained. We treat creative labor as something that deserves protection, not just gratitude. Our work spans publishing, audio, and visual storytelling. Each pillar reinforces the other. Nothing is disposable. And the hardest part of leading this work is building while being expected to constantly justify legitimacy. I'm not asking to be believed. I'm building evidence. Institutions are not announced, they are constructed. Zuri World Studios is a constructed institution. What I want people to take from this is ask what structures are missing in the lives of the people that you claim to care about. Then build those structures, fund them, advocate for them, do them praise and do them survival structures, do them the justice that is needed so that when this praise is heaped upon these structures, then you're not just ignoring the gaps and the holes. You're doing what you need to do to fill them. For restoration does not begin with belief, it begins with construction. I'll say this, when you say restore, you're talking about recognizing what is actually broken and giving the tools to fix it, examining the system to produces the harm and beginning to repair that system, stabilize growth, tell the truth, even when it costs. Own repair. Repair isn't forgiveness, it's responsibility. And it requires resources, not rhetoric. Rebuild systems that don't require people to perform their healing to earn their humanity back. Endurance, not just survival endurance, but sustainability. And when I say sustainability, I mean allowing these structures to build so that institutions can be held accountable. When I say institutions, I'm referring again to education. I'm referring to housing. I'm referring to employment. I'm referring to mental health therapy. I'm referring to psychological therapy. I'm referring to medical health. These are things that marginalize individuals who have been taught that structure is you performing, structure is you reaching out and you being taught. Restoration annihilates that. Restoration proves that without the structures in place, there will be no form of reform. There will be no form of continuation. So when you talk about these things, we have to begin to evolve and begin to elevate and begin to lift one another so that we can stay sustainable, so that we can begin to build and redeem and not just rely on reclamation, not just rely on understanding of a broken system or a broken framework, It's not inspiration, but it is a way to name what rebuilding actually looks like. So I want to say this, and then I will settle this in. Survival is what a person builds inside of themselves when there is no structure around them. So I will say this lastly, and I will leave you with this, if I can leave one thing. Understand that dignity does not have to be earned, it should be given. Restoration provides the pathway for that dignity, for that connection, for that unity. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. People don't realize what happens on the other side of the experience that you have gone through.
Mhm.
So, if it's okay with you, let's take a step back so that we can unpack the story.
Absolutely.
Take us back to cell 217. What did that moment feel like emotionally and spiritually for you when you realized that you had full control of your life, regardless of the incarceration?
Cell 217 is a turning point for me. At the time that this realization had come, I had been incarcerated for some time. And the moment that realization clicked was like people say this all the time, a aha moment, but it was more than an aha moment. It was as if understanding had come forth, clarity had presented itself. And I knew that I was able to move forward long before I was able to be free. And there is the distinction, there is the difference, because I can move forward emotionally, I can move forward mentally, I can move forward psychologically, long before my physical body was ever able to escape those bars and leave outside of cell 217.
Hmm. So, when did you realize that incarceration did not have to define your identity?
Thank you for that question. I realized that when I was at my lowest point and I was placing all these names upon myself: convict, prisoner, um, reject, loser. Um, and I realized that I do not have to allow anyone to define me but me. Just because I am in a situation does not mean that I have to in house that situation. Doesn't mean that I have to take that upon myself. I don't have to bear those names. So I realized that when I begin to apply myself and when I begin to allow myself to define me, then other definitions held no power, held no weight.
Hmm. So, how did self forgiveness change your trajectory, do you think?
It opened up the door for healing. Um, I had to learn to not only forgive myself for the self harm that I did, but to forgive myself for the harm that I allowed others to get to place upon me. And I had to forgive myself for the harm that I committed. And that was the key for me. When I realized that I did not have to hold on to a, a guilt that held me anchored to a specific moment in time.
Mm.
Once I realized that I had the freedom to let that go, it began to open up doors so that I could begin to see the pathways for healing, the pathways for moving forward for education, for um, emotional connection, for mental health. All those
Mm.
things began to open up once I came to an understanding that forgiveness is universal. Forgiveness is not harbored by one. Authority does not issue forgiveness.
Mm.
Forgiveness is there already for you.
Mm. So, how did accountability become a pathway to freedom rather than shame?
It allowed me to see myself clearly. Shame shines a spotlight on your worst moment. And
Mm.
most shame is not assigned to you by outside forces. Most shame is assigned to you internally. we begin to see ourselves, and we begin to put that pressure up on ourselves. We begin to loathe ourselves. We begin to feel as if we don't belong, as if we're not worthy. Well, I came to realize when accountability stepped into place, accountability does not mean that there is a forgiveness for the wrong done. Accountability means that there is an ownership for the wrong that is done. And once there is an ownership, then there can be forgiveness. Then there can be acknowledgement and understanding. And so that's what accountability did for me.
Hmm. So, what lessons did prison teach you about human dignity?
It taught me that human dignity is non negotiable.
Mhm.
It taught me that human dignity is not a pawn to be shuffled on a board. Dignity is inert, it's inherited. Dignity is to be built within the structures. And it taught me that when systems withhold dignity for the sake of performance, then we begin to judge, we begin to categorize, and we begin to dehumanize individuals.
Hmm.
Dignity is not an option. It's not for debate.
Hmm. Now, while you were in there, you did a lot of things for yourself. You got an education, you focused on your personal growth.
Mhm.
How did education and personal growth become tools for transformation for you?
There would have been no growth without education.
Mhm.
So I'll start with there. Education opened up the doors academically for me to gain a clearer understanding of the way systems worked, the way that I have been navigating and moved and being forced through the systems. But it also allowed me to see a pathway forward. So when I began to immerse myself in education, gaining my diplomas, gaining my certifications as a counselor, when I began to incorporate those things, I begin to see that not only is education a pathway for academic revolution, education is a pathway for restoration, it's a pathway for acceptance, it's a pathway for forgiveness, it's a pathway for enlightenment, and it helps you and compels you and move you forward.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Massive changes. So, what
Absolutely.
misconceptions do people have about redemption and second chances?
Second chances are slogans. Restoration is structure. It is the framework for everything else. It is the pillars. Without restoration, without dignity in housing and education, without the ability to have health care, without the ability to be restored fully as a human, without having to perform for your healing, then there's never going to be a stability.
Hmm. Yeah, these are things that we miss.
Absolutely.
We don't even
Absolutely.
see it. So,
Absolutely.
how do we move from surviving our past to leading through it?
I think we have to embrace the moments. We have to
Mhm.
acknowledge the moments where we are, and then we begin to have the courage to embrace it. There's never going to be a moving forward without first an acknowledgement of the past, not anchoring to the past, but an acknowledgement of the past, a compelling momentum for the present, and then a intent desire to reach for the future.
Yeah.
Um, Without that, there's we will become stagnant. There, we will just settle in one place, and we will call that healing. When it's not healing, it is compliance.
Mhm. Hmm.
Mhm.
So how does storytelling play? What role does storytelling play in the healing of trauma?
Storytelling is not just the passing of information; it is archiving history. It is
Mhm.
preserving voice. It is allowing truth to resonate. And when I say truth, I'm not talking about what I presume is right or wrong. because right and wrong changes with perception. But I'm talking about the truth as factually stated. Um, and so when we begin to embrace that, when we begin to understand that, then we begin to see the value in archiving stories, especially marginalized and control people that are involved in controlled environments. Most times those stories are lost. But when we begin to archive that through storytelling, and when I say storytelling, I mean visually, I mean through sound, I mean through literature, I mean through word of mouth. When we begin to incorporate that and we begin to allow that to teach us, we can move forward with clarity.
That's just awesome. So, how do women reclaim their voice after years of silence or judgment?
Women can reclaim their voice by ownership. And this is what
Mhm.
I mean. Far too long, women are compelled to perform before you're invited to a leadership role to prove that you can be trusted. I think that when women begin to take ownership, own your property, own your IP, own your voice, we begin to shift the momentum. And once we begin to shift that momentum, then we can move forward. We can say that, hey, I own this. I have this dignity. Dignity is restored because I am the controller of this fate. I
Mhm.
determine how my voice is heard. I determine when my voice is heard. I will not allow myself to be censored. When we stand up and own our own voices, then we're unstoppable.
Yeah, that is so true.
Mhm.
So, what would you say to someone who's feeling emotionally stuck right now?
I would tell them not hold on, but push forward. In the
Mm,
midst of that moment where you feel like I can't hang on, I can't move on, I don't know what to do, I don't know where I am, that's not a reason to stop moving forward. You
mhm,
know, I often tell people that the forward direction is just one step ahead. When you take the next step and the next step, you may not know the final destination, but you know that
mhm,
you're making progress. Be it getting up in the morning and let me write this thought down. If I'm walking down the street and I have an idea, let me preserve that. If I am going through a situation where I feel like I can't go on, let me reach out. Let me connect. Let me build community. Let me build connections. Let me build this structure around me. And that's not to say that it's easy, but it's doable.
mhm. I like that. Wow. So, how can society better support restoration rather than punishment alone?
I believe that systems have to take responsibility. We cannot keep the onus on the individual. When we allow systems to thwart the view, when we allow systems to off the hook, when we allow them off the hook, and when I say systems and institutions, I'm talking about powers that be. I'm talking about government institutions. I'm talking about private institutions. I'm talking about institutions that hold and house so much of our lives. And then when we begin to hold them accountable, when we begin to demand that there be transparency, when we begin to man, especially women and especially marginalized women and women of color, when we begin to step up and say, hey, I'm worthy of this. I should not have to prove my worth. I am worthy. Then
Yeah.
we will have better access. We will have an ability to move forward with a solid foundation.
That is awesome. So, what is the legacy that you want your story to create?
I want the legacy to be this, that everyone should understand that your dignity and your worth is not based on individuality. It is based on how you continue to move yourself forward. Your dignity is non negotiable. Hmm.
That is just wonderful. My last two questions for you are going to be a bit of a thought experiment.
Okay.
First one, I will teleport you back.
Okay.
That young woman who found herself in trouble, given this long sentence, and is just not seeing the wood from the trees at that point.
Hmm.
If you could go back and give yourself three nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point,
Hmm.
what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
The first would be that you are greater than the sum of your worst moment. The second one would be that endurance is a choice. And the third one would be that resilience is already inside of you. Just tap into it. Do not let go. Continue to hold on. And then I would say to myself, be strong in your struggle because your struggle is what makes you strong. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And now to teleport into the future,
Hmm.
let's go and have a conversation with the 90-year-old you, this
Hmm.
woman who has led you up until this point.
Hmm.
If you could go and sit and have a conversation with this wise woman, what will you say to her when you finally meet her? And I'll tell you the reason why I like to ask women this question. A lot of us don't realize that the wise woman already exists within us. You know,
Hmm.
we look outside of ourselves all the time for answers, for solutions. We look to other people, but we
Hmm.
forget to go within. And I think
Absolutely.
your experience forced you to meet that wise woman. You already know her, you've had conversations with her, she has guided you to this point. So, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
I would tell her, thank you. I would say, thank you for showing me that no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, I am worthy. Thank you for showing me that I can reach beyond my wildest dreams, grasp hold to it, and cleave it and make it a reality.
Absolutely love that. Thank you so much. And I can hear your little cat there wanting your attention. Pick it up if you have to. It's okay.
Yeah,
We are friendly. Somebody's wanting some love there.
yeah, he's running around at the door. He wants to go out.
Absolutely love it. Your story is absolutely inspiring. And I would love to know how we as a community can get behind you and support you with your work. How can people reach out to you? What is it that you need right now?
People can reach me at my LinkedIn page or they can reach me at my email. I am mpingo@gmail.com. Thank you for allowing me that space. And I can say that I think the support most needed is to get the story out there, spread the word, reach out to a sister that you see is in need and elevate. We are one community. Let's build together.
I love that. That is so true. And we all know somebody who's needing some support, who's needing some help. It's now up to us to reach out and make a difference in whatever small way we can. So
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing your story and making the time that you spent worthwhile. Thank you for being an inspiration.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you again for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.